The rejection letter slipped from Isla's fingers, fluttering to the cold kitchen floor like a broken promise. Rain hammered against the window, each drop a tiny fist against the glass. She'd spent 2 years painting Leo's room sunshine yellow, filling it with secondhand books in a quilt she'd sewn herself. 2 years preparing for a child who would never come home. The court's decision was final. Single woman, unstable income, no support system. Insufficient. Mateo stood in the doorway watching his best friend of 10 years crumble. He'd seen Isla weather storms before, losing her parents, her failed gallery showing, that disaster of a relationship 3 years ago. But this was different. This was her breaking. He stepped forward, picked up the letter, and tore it clean in half. They need a husband? His voice was steady, even as his heart hammered. Then let me be one. The rec room at Brightwood Children's Home smelled like industrial cleaner and forgotten dreams. Isla sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, watching Leo build a tower from mismatched blocks in the corner. 6 years old, dark hair falling into serious brown eyes, the kind of quiet that came from learning early that noise brought trouble. He hadn't looked at her once in the 20 minutes she'd been there. "Leo?" She kept her voice soft. "I brought something for you." The boy's hands stilled on a red block. Didn't turn. Didn't speak. Isla pulled the wrapped package from her bag, setting it on the carpet between them. Brown paper, tied with kitchen twine. Nothing fancy. She'd learned in her previous visits that Leo didn't trust fancy. "You don't have to open it now, but it's yours, for your room." "Don't got a room." Leo's voice was barely audible. "Got a bed." The distinction gutted her. Isla swallowed hard, watching his small shoulders hunch forward. "Well, when you come home with me, you'll have a whole room, with a window that faces the garden, and bookshelves. I thought maybe you'd like this for one of them." Finally, Leo turned. His gaze locked on the package with something that might have been hunger if it weren't wrapped in so much fear. "Miss Mercer said you're still trying to adopt me." "I am trying." Isla's throat tightened. "I promise you, Leo, I'm not giving up." The boy studied her for a long moment, those old eyes in that young face. Then he reached for the package, fingers careful on the twine. Inside was a wooden bookend shaped like a rocket ship, hand-carved, sanded smooth. Mateo's work. Leo traced the fins with one finger. "For our bookshelf," Isla whispered. "Yours and mine." Leo clutched the rocket to his chest. Didn't say thank you. But when Mrs. Patterson called time and Isla stood to leave, he finally spoke. "Don't stop trying." She looked back at him, this small person who'd already lost too much. "Never." Isla's studio apartment was chaos. Papers covered every surface, application forms, financial statements, character references, home inspection reports. All of it useless now. She sat on her second-hand couch, staring at the rejection letter for the 100th time. Single applicant, insufficient household income, lack of stable family structure. She'd known it was coming. The social worker's pitying expression during the final interview had said everything. But knowing and feeling were different countries. Her phone buzzed. Mateo, asking if she wanted company. She ignored it. Another buzz. "I'm bringing dinner." She ignored that too. 30 minutes later, his key turned in her lock. Of course he still had a key. They'd been trading keys since their 20s, back when Isla first moved to Portland and Mateo was rebuilding his first Victorian. He appeared in her doorway carrying Thai takeout and the kind of careful expression people wore around broken things. "I'm not hungry," Isla said. "You haven't eaten since yesterday." Mateo set the bags on her coffee table, shoving papers aside. "I know because I texted you at lunch and you said you'd eaten, but you used a period instead of your usual chaotic string of emojis. Dead giveaway." Despite everything, a ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You're insufferable. And you're deflecting. He sat beside her, close enough that their knees touched. "Talk to me." The dam broke. Everything she'd been holding back since leaving Brightwood came pouring out. The way Leo had looked at that rocket ship bookend, the promise she'd made, the cruel mathematics of the system that decided she wasn't enough because she didn't have someone to split the mortgage with. Her voice cracked on the unfairness of it all. Mateo listened the way he always did, completely. The takeout went cold between them. "There has to be another way," Isla finally said, exhausted. "I can't just—" "I promised him, Mateo." "I know." His jaw was tight, something working behind his eyes. "I have 3 months. That's what Mrs. Patterson said. 3 months to reapply with improved circumstances before Leo gets transferred to a facility in Seattle. They're closing Brightwood's elementary program." The room fell quiet except for rain starting up against the window. Portland in October. Everything gray and endless. Mateo stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His shoulders were rigid under his worn flannel shirt. "What if you weren't single?" The question came out rough. Isla looked up. "What? What if—" He turned to face her, something fierce and frightening in his expression. "What if you had a husband?" The Kenton Club was their place. Had been since Mateo dragged Isla there on her first night in Portland, insisting she needed to see real Portland before the tech people gentrified it completely. Now the dive bar felt like sacred ground. They claimed their usual booth in the back, beneath a neon sign that read, "Keep Portland Weird," in jagged letters. Isla stared at him across the scarred wooden table. "You're not serious." "I'm completely serious." Mateo's hands wrapped around his beer bottle. "They need you to be married? Fine, we get married." "Mateo, just listen." He leaned forward, intensity radiating off him. "It's paperwork, that's all. We go down to the courthouse, file the license, and suddenly you meet every single one of their requirements. Stable household, dual income, two-parent home. That's fraud. That's creative problem solving." His mouth quirked, but his eyes stayed serious. You've been my best friend for 10 years. I've watched you pour everything into preparing for Leo. I've seen you at Brightwood every week, showing up even when you knew it was hopeless. That kid deserves you, and you deserve him." Isla's chest felt too tight. "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering." Mateo reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Calloused from years of woodworking, warm and solid. "Look, I'm 30 years old, single, with no prospects. My schedule is flexible. I work from home half the time. The house I'm renovating has plenty of room. We'd make this work." "Your house?" Isla's voice pitched higher. "You want me to move into your house?" "Our house, technically, for the paperwork." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing lumber orders instead of upending both their lives. "The social workers will want to see stable housing. My place makes more sense than your studio. And before you spiral, yes, there are multiple bedrooms. You'd have your own space." Isla pulled her hand back, processing. Everything in her wanted to say yes immediately. But the practical part, the part that had been taking care of herself since age 17, started calculating costs. "What do you get out of this?" Something flickered across Mateo's face. "A clear conscience. And maybe you'll finally let me teach you how to use a table saw properly." "I'm serious." "So am I." But his gaze dropped to his beer. "Look, you know my history. My parents' marriage was a disaster. I watched my dad walk out when I was Leo's age. I'm not good at the relationship thing never have been. But this I can do. Sign some papers, play house for a few months until the adoption's final. Help a kid who needs you." There it was, the truth beneath the offer. Mateo had spent his entire adult life avoiding anything that looked like commitment, terrified of repeating his father's mistakes. But this wouldn't be real. This would be safe, controlled, with an exit strategy. Just until the adoption is final, Isla's voice was barely audible. Just until Leo's legally yours. Then we file for quiet dissolution, go back to normal. Nobody gets hurt. The bartender called last call. Outside, rain had turned to downpour. Isla watched water stream down the window, distorting the streetlights into stars. She thought about Leo clutching that rocket ship bookend, about the empty yellow room in her studio, about Mateo's steady presence beside her for the last decade of her life. Okay, the word fell between them like a stone into still water. Let's get married. Mateo's kitchen table was covered in documents that would rewrite both their lives. Marriage license application, joint bank account forms, insurance beneficiary changes. Isla felt like she was preparing for an exam in a language she didn't speak. Okay, so if they ask about our relationship timeline, Mateo's pen hovered over a notepad. We met at a gallery opening 10 years ago. You were showing your illustrations. I was there with my ex, Jessica. You spilled red wine on my shirt and apologized so profusely I had to ask you out just to make you stop. That's actually how we met, Isla pointed out. Exactly. Best lies contain truth. He scribbled notes. We stayed friends after you rejected me. I didn't reject you. You were dating someone. And feelings developed slowly. We didn't want to risk the friendship, so we both dated other people. Badly. Then last year around Christmas, we finally admitted we'd been in love the whole time. Isla's stomach did something complicated. That's specific. Mrs. Patterson strikes me as thorough. Mateo's jaw was tight with focus. Professional. Like he was planning a renovation instead of fabricating their entire romantic history. They're going to ask how I proposed, how you take your coffee, what side of the bed you sleep on. We need to know each other inside out. I already know those things about you, Isla said quietly. You take yours black with one sugar. You sleep on the left. You have a scar on your right shoulder from when you fell off a roof in college. You're allergic to shellfish but not fish, which you think is unfair. You organize your workshop by project type, not tool type, which drives your brother crazy. Mateo looked up, something unreadable crossing his face. Right side of the bed, vanilla creamer, no sugar. You have a birthmark shaped like Oregon on your hip. You alphabetize your books by author within genre categories. You sing off-key when you're nervous. Your favorite color is amber, but you always say yellow because amber sounds pretentious. The air between them felt suddenly thin. They'd been friends long enough to be each other's emergency contacts, to have keys to each other's places, to know the small, intimate details that accumulate over years of proximity. But listing them out loud, in service of this fiction, made everything feel different, dangerous. Isla cleared her throat. What about sleeping arrangements, for when they visit? Guest room is being renovated. Master bedroom has a king bed. We can... He trailed off, color rising in his neck. We're adults. We can share a bed for inspection day, or I'll sleep on the couch. Mateo, she waited until he met her eyes. Are you sure about this? Once we file, we're lying to a government agency, to social workers. If we get caught, we won't get caught. His conviction was absolute. Because this isn't some scam. You're going to be an incredible mother to Leo. He needs you. And I'm going to be your husband on paper so that the system can't use their arbitrary requirements to keep a kid from the home he deserves. That's not fraud. That's justice. The way he said it, fierce and certain, made something crack open in Isla's chest. She reached for the pen. Okay, let's build our story. They worked until midnight, constructing a relationship from the scaffolding of their real friendship, creating memories that felt true because they almost were. First date at Powell's bookstore, first kiss in Mateo's workshop, saw dust in the air and the smell of cedar. Moving in together last spring, blending their lives slowly, carefully. A proposal over cinnamon toast on a Sunday morning, because Mateo knew grand gestures would make Isla uncomfortable. By the time Isla left, they had a manila folder full of their fake history and an appointment at the courthouse in 3 days. Mateo walked her to her car, umbrella sheltering them both from the rain. Ease? He caught her hand before she could get in. Thank you for letting me do this. You're the one doing me the favor. Maybe. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. But I don't think I could watch you lose Leo, so maybe this is selfish too. He disappeared back into his house before she could respond. Isla sat in her car, hands still warm from his touch, wondering how something pretend could already feel so real. The Multnomah County Courthouse smelled like floor polish and bureaucracy. Isla stood beside Mateo in the small ceremony room, wearing a cream dress she'd owned for years and a bouquet of grocery store daisies he'd bought at the last minute. No family, no friends, just a bored officiant and a witness pulled from the hallway who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Do you, Mateo Reyes, take Isla Mercer to be your lawfully wedded wife? Mateo's hand was steady as it held hers. I do. His voice didn't waver. Isla's did. When the officiant turned to her, asking the same question, the words stuck in her throat. This was happening. This was real. Except it wasn't real. It was paper and performance, and the most generous thing anyone had ever done for her. I do. It came out as a whisper. The rings were cheap silver from Target, bought yesterday during their lunch break. Mateo slid one onto her finger with surprising gentleness. His hands were shaking, Isla realized. Just slightly. Enough that she knew he felt it too. The weight of this moment, despite its falseness. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The officiant barely looked up from her paperwork. You may kiss the bride. Isla's eyes went wide. They hadn't discussed this. Mateo's expression mirrored her panic for half a second before smoothing into something practiced. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. His lips brushed her cheek, barely there, and lingered just long enough to be believable. Thank you, he murmured against her skin. They signed the papers in silence. The witness scrawled her name and left immediately, probably late for her real job. Isla stared at the marriage certificate, at both their names together in official typeface. Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, Mercer. They'd hyphenated. Another detail meant to show progressive equality to the social workers. Outside, Portland was having one of its rare, clear October days. Blue sky, golden leaves, the kind of weather that belonged at a real wedding. Mateo unlocked his truck, her car now too, technically, since they'd combined insurance, and opened her door. Lunch? He asked. We should probably celebrate something. A lifelong commitment to legal fraud? I was thinking more like finally getting those tacos we've been talking about. His smile was crooked, trying for normal and almost landing it. Come on, wife. I know your favorite taco truck. The word wife sent electricity down Isla's spine. She climbed into the truck, clutching her courthouse daisies, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. This was fine. This was the plan. This was just Mateo, her best friend, who happened to be her husband now for the next few months until Leo's adoption finalized. They ate tacos in the truck bed at a park overlooking the Willamette River. Talked about anything except what they'd just done. Mateo's latest restoration project. Isla's commission for a children's book cover. The new coffee shop opening in his neighborhood. When he dropped her back at her studio, the silver ring caught the late afternoon light. Start packing this week, Mateo said. Mrs. Patterson is scheduled for a home visit in 2 weeks. We should be fully settled by then, looking properly married. Right, properly married. Isla twisted the ring. It fit perfectly, which seemed cosmically unfair. We're going to pull this off. His confidence was its own kind of shelter. Leo's going to come home. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Watched him drive away, her husband of 3 hours. Later, alone in her studio, Isla would look at the marriage certificate again, would trace both their names with her finger, would wonder when exactly she'd stop being certain this was entirely pretend. But that was later. For now, she started packing her life into boxes, preparing to move into a house with a man she'd known for 10 years and married in 10 minutes. For Leo, she told herself, everything was for Leo. The lie was already getting easier to tell. Moving day arrived with typical Portland rain, and Mateo's brother Luis bringing his truck. Isla stood in Mateo's, their, living room surrounded by boxes, trying not to feel like an imposter. The house was beautiful in the way of Mateo's restoration projects. Original hardwood floors refinished to a honeyglow, crown molding he'd repaired himself, windows he'd hunted down from salvage yards, every detail chosen with care. Now her things were invading his carefully curated space. "Where do you want the art supplies?" Luis hauled in a box labeled "Paints, Fragile," in Isla's careful printing. She looked at Mateo helplessly. "Sunroom," Mateo said without hesitation. "North-facing windows. Best light in the house." To Isla, he added, "I cleared it out yesterday. Figured you'd need studio space." "You cleared the sunroom?" Isla's throat went tight. That room had been his woodworking overflow, full of project pieces and salvage materials. "Mateo, you didn't have to. You're an illustrator. You need workspace. I've got the whole garage for my stuff." He said it like it was nothing, this rearrangement of his life to accommodate hers. "Come on, I'll show you." The sunroom was perfect. He'd painted the walls the exact shade of cream she'd mentioned once, months ago, saying it made colors pop without overwhelming them. Had installed floating shelves at the right height for her supply baskets. Even moved in the antique drafting table she'd been storing at his place after buying it at an estate sale. "Mateo," she couldn't finish the sentence. "Too much?" His expression was carefully neutral. "I can change it if—" "It's perfect." The words came out rough. Thank you." Luis appeared in the doorway with another box, looked between them, and raised an eyebrow. "Man, you two are really selling this marriage thing. Almost looks real." "Almost," Mateo agreed, but something in his voice was off. "Bedroom stuff goes upstairs. Left room at the end of the hall. The master bedroom." Isla had seen it before, of course, had been to this house dozens of times. But seeing her boxes stacked next to Mateo's furniture made her stomach flip. The king bed dominated the space, covered in a gray duvet. Masculine, but not aggressively so. 2 nightstands, though one was clearly unused. Mateo's clothes in the closet, now pushed to one side to make room for hers. "I cleared 3 drawers in the dresser," he said from the doorway, "and half the closet. But we should probably make it look more balanced for the inspection. Can you scatter some of your stuff around? Bathroom counter, nightstand, whatever makes it look lived in." "Staged," Isla corrected softly. "Lived in," he repeated firmly, "because you will be living here. This isn't a set. It's your home for however long you need it." Luis made 3 more trips, then claimed an emergency text from his girlfriend and fled. Smart man. The house fell quiet except for rain on the roof. Isla and Mateo stood in the bedroom, surrounded by the physical evidence of their merged lives, both carefully not looking at the bed. "I should unpack," Isla finally said. "Yeah, I'll order pizza. The good place you like, with the truffle oil." He disappeared downstairs. Isla opened boxes mechanically, hanging clothes next to his in the closet, her dresses against his flannel, her shoes under his boots. In the bathroom, she arranged her toiletries next to his single bottle of 3-in-1 shampoo and laughed despite herself. They'd been friends long enough for her to know his grooming routine was basically functional. But placing her toothbrush next to his in the holder made her hands shake. Such a small, domestic intimacy. She gripped the sink, staring at their reflection in the mirror. This was fine. People shared bathrooms all the time. Roommates, friends, fake spouses committing light fraud to save a child. Downstairs, she found Mateo assembling Leo's bed frame in the room, across from the master. Sunshine yellow walls. He'd painted them too, she realized. Bookshelves already installed. The rocket ship bookends sitting on the top shelf waiting. When did you have time to do all this? Isla asked. Couldn't sleep. He didn't look up from the hex key. Kept thinking about Leo seeing his room for the first time. Wanted it to be ready. Isla sat on the floor beside him, picking up screws to hand him. They worked in comfortable silence, the way they had 100 times before on his projects. But this was different. This room was for the child they'd lied to the government to bring home. The child who would live with them, watch them pretend to be in love, think they were his parents. Mateo? She waited until he met her eyes. What do we tell Leo about us? His jaw worked. The truth, I guess, that we're married, that we're his family, but not the whole truth. No, he set down the hex key. Not until he's secure. Not until the adoption is final and there's no risk of him being taken away. We tell him we're married, we love him, and this is his home. The rest? We'll figure it out when the time comes. It should have felt wrong, should have scraped against every honest bone in Isla's body. But looking at this room, at the care Mateo had taken with every detail, she couldn't find regret, only a fierce, aching gratitude and a fear she didn't want to name. The pizza arrived. They ate it sitting on the floor of Leo's room, surrounded by boxes and possibility. Mateo's phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Patterson confirming their home visit for next Thursday. 2 weeks to become convincingly married. 2 weeks to build a life that looked real enough to fool professionals. We've got this, Mateo said, reading her expression. Do we? Isla gestured around. We're sitting in a room we painted for a child we're lying to save. In a house where we're pretending to be in love, wearing rings we bought at Target. How is this going to work? Because we're not pretending about the important parts. His voice was steady, certain. We do love Leo. This will be his home. And we're already family, Is. We have been for years. We're just making it official. He made it sound so simple. Maybe it was. Maybe they could pull this off on friendship and good intentions, and the way Mateo always knew how to make her believe in impossible things. Isla looked at the rocket ship bookend, gleaming in the fading light. Okay, she whispered. We've got this. The rain outside picked up again, drumming steadily on the roof. Somewhere in the city, Leo was falling asleep in a group home bed. Maybe holding that bookend, maybe believing in promises. And here, in a house that smelled like fresh paint and pizza and possibility, 2 best friends sat in a room painted sunshine yellow, building a family out of paperwork and hope. It had to be enough. It had to work. Because Isla had already started to suspect that losing Leo would break her. But losing this fragile, fraudulent, strangely perfect life they were building, might destroy them both. Mrs. Gable arrived exactly on time, clipboard in hand and skepticism in her eyes. She was younger than Isla expected, maybe 40, with the kind of sharp observation that came from seeing too many bad situations. Isla's hands shook as she opened the door, but Mateo's palms settled at the small of her back. Warm, steady, a gesture that could have been husbandly, except they'd never touched like this before. Mr. and Mrs. Reyes? Mercer. Mrs. Gable's smile was professional. Thank you for having me. Please, call us Mateo and Isla. Mateo's voice was easy, comfortable. He was good at this, Isla realized. The performance. Come in. Can I take your coat? The house tour went smoothly at first. Mrs. Gable made notes about the updated electrical, the safety measures Mateo had installed, the fully stocked kitchen. She paused in Leo's room, taking in the yellow walls and carefully arranged books. You've prepared thoroughly. We've been preparing for 2 years, Isla said quietly. This isn't impulse. He's our son. He just doesn't live with us yet. Something flickered in Mrs. Gable's expression. And your marriage? Mrs. Patterson's notes indicate this is recent. There it was. The trap. Isla's mind went blank, but Mateo's hand found hers, fingers threading together like they'd done it 1,000 times. "We've been together 10 years, he said. Friends first, then more. We didn't get married earlier because, honestly, I was scared. My parents' divorce was ugly. I swore I'd never put someone through that uncertainty." His thumb brushed across Isla's knuckles. "But watching Isla with Leo, seeing how much she wants to give him a home, I realized I was letting fear keep me from family, from the person I've loved for years." Isla stared at him. The words were part of their script, but something in his delivery made them feel true, dangerous. "That's quite romantic," Mrs. Gable said, but her pen kept moving. "And you're prepared for the challenges of adopting an older child? Leo has been in the system for 3 years. He has trust issues, attachment difficulties. I know what it's like to be that kid." The words came out before Isla could stop them. "My parents died when I was 17. I didn't have anyone. I lived in my car for 2 months before getting into a youth program. I know what it feels like to be alone, to wonder if anyone will ever choose you. I can't give Leo his birth parents back, but I can give him a home where he's chosen. Every single day." The room went quiet. Mrs. Gable looked up from her clipboard, really looked at Isla for the first time. "You didn't include that in your application." "Some things are private." Mateo's voice was gentle but firm. "Isla doesn't define herself by trauma. She defines herself by what she's built after it." Mrs. Gable made another note, moved to the master bedroom. Isla's heart hammered as the social worker took in the shared closet, the mixed toiletries, the reading glasses on both nightstands, the bed they'd carefully rumpled that morning to look slept in. "How long have you been living together?" "Officially, 3 weeks." Mateo leaned against the doorframe. "Unofficially, we've been sleeping over at each other's places for years. Moving in was more like consolidating." "I see." Mrs. Gable walked to the dresser, where a framed photo sat. Isla and Mateo at the coast last summer, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something off camera. Luis had taken it. They'd added it to the dresser yesterday, part of the staging. "Tell me about your proposal." Isla's mouth went dry. They'd practiced this. She knew the story, so why couldn't she remember? "Sunday morning," Mateo said. "We were making cinnamon toast. It's our thing, weekend mornings, terrible coffee and cinnamon toast. And Isla was talking about Leo, about how close we were to the court date, and she just looked." He paused, something raw crossing his face. "She looked so full of hope and terror at the same time. And I thought, I want to protect this, her, us, everything we built. So I asked her to marry me right there. Sugar on her fingers, her hair in this messy bun, most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." The detail, the specific, painful detail. Isla's chest ached. She hadn't told him to add that part, about her hair, about the way she looked. That was improvisation. That was dangerous. "And you said yes immediately?" Mrs. Gable asked Isla. "No," the truth slipped out. "I said no. I told him he was just being protective, that he didn't have to fix this for me. We fought about it for 2 days. Then he showed me the papers he'd already filled out for the marriage license, dated from a week before. He'd been planning to ask. Leo was just the excuse he needed to finally do it." Mateo's eyes widened slightly. That wasn't in the script, but he recovered fast, ducking his head like he'd been caught in an endearing secret. Mrs. Gable wrote something that looked suspiciously like genuine affection on her clipboard. The rest of the inspection passed in a blur. Financial records, employment verification, emergency contacts. Mrs. Gable asked about their support system, their conflict resolution strategies, their plan for discipline and education. Mateo answered half. Isla answered the other half. They overlapped and interrupted each other like people who'd had these conversations 100 times in private. At the door, Mrs. Gable paused. "I have to ask, This marriage, this timing, it's very convenient, isn't it? Isla's heart stopped. This was it. They'd been caught. But Mateo stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet and absolutely certain. Mrs. Gable, I've watched Isla volunteer at Brightwood every week for 2 years. I've seen her save money from illustration jobs she hated to build a college fund for a kid who wasn't legally hers yet. I've held her while she cried about court dates and red tape and a system that punishes people for being single. His hand found Isla's shoulder. Loving Isla isn't convenient. It's never been convenient, but it's the easiest thing I've ever done. And if marrying her means Leo gets the mom he deserves, then yeah, I'd say the timing worked out pretty damn perfectly. Mrs. Gable studied them for a long moment. Then she smiled, small but real. I'll file my report by Friday. Expect a call next week about the transition timeline. She left. The door clicked shut. Isla and Mateo stood in the sudden silence, still touching, both breathing too fast. Finally, Mateo's hand dropped from her shoulder. That was close, he said. Too close, Isla's voice shook. The thing about the proposal, I'm sorry, I panicked and it worked, he turned to face her fully, you saved it. The dated marriage license, that was brilliant. I made that up. We don't have... I know, but she doesn't. His smile was crooked. We make a good team. A good team. Not a real couple, just a good team. The distinction shouldn't have stung. Isla twisted her target ring, suddenly exhausted. They'd passed the first test, but she'd felt it in there, the way the lies started tasting like truth. The way Mateo's improvised details about her messy hair and hopeful terror had landed like accusations. I'm going to make tea, she said. You want some? Yeah, tea sounds good. They moved to the kitchen, falling into the comfortable rhythm of their friendship. Mateo filled the kettle while Isla grabbed mugs. Rain started up again outside. The house creaked and settled around them, and neither of them mentioned how easily they'd lied, how convincing they'd been, how much of what they'd said to Mrs. Gable might have been true all along. The call came on Tuesday. Mrs. Patterson's voice was warm but professional. Isla and Mateo had been approved for supervised placement. Leo would come home on Friday for a 90-day trial period. 3 months to prove they could be his family. 3 months before the system could still take him away. Friday afternoon, Isla stood in Leo's sunshine yellow bedroom and tried not to throw up from nerves. Mateo was downstairs making snacks nobody would eat. They'd spent the last 2 days turning the house into a home. Fresh flowers on the kitchen table, the cookie jar filled, blankets draped on the couch for movie nights. Every detail designed to say, "You're safe here," without words. The doorbell rang at exactly 3 o'clock. Mrs. Patterson stood on the porch with Leo beside her. The boy looked smaller than Isla remembered, drowned in a too-big jacket, clutching a garbage bag of belongings. His eyes found Isla's, then skittered away. Behind them, a car idled at the curb, ready to take him back if this didn't work. "Hi, Leo." Isla crouched to his level, keeping her distance. "Welcome home." Leo didn't respond, just stared at Mateo, who'd appeared in the hallway behind Isla. Tall, male, unfamiliar. The boy's shoulders hunched, and he stepped closer to Mrs. Patterson's leg. "Leo," the social worker said gently, "this is Mateo. Remember? We talked about him. He's Isla's husband." "You didn't have a husband before." Leo's voice was barely audible, accusatory. Isla's heart cracked. Of course, another adult, another variable, another thing that could disappear. She looked at Mateo helplessly, but he was already moving, lowering himself to sit on the floor right there in the entryway, making himself smaller, less threatening. "You're right," Mateo said simply. "I wasn't around when Isla visited you before. That probably feels confusing, and maybe scary. I get that." He picked at the floorboard seam. "I was scared too when I found out you were coming. Not scared of you, scared I'd mess up, that I wouldn't know how to help Isla take care of you right." Leo watched him warily, listening but not trusting. So here's the deal. Mateo met the boy's eyes. I know I'm new. I know you don't know me yet. But Isla loves you. Like a lot. So much she painted your room yellow, even though she thinks yellow is kind of ugly. Isla made an indignant sound, and Leo's mouth twitched, almost a smile. And I love Isla, which means I'm going to do my best to be someone you can count on. But I'm probably going to mess up sometimes, and that's okay. You can tell me when I mess up. Silence stretched. Then Leo looked at Isla. Can I see my room? Relief flooded through her. Of course, come on. They climbed the stairs slowly, Leo clutching his garbage bag. Mrs. Patterson followed at a discreet distance. When Leo saw the yellow walls, the bookshelves, the rocket ship bookend exactly where Isla had promised, something shifted in his small face. Not happiness yet, but maybe the beginning of hope. This is mine? He set the garbage bag down carefully. All yours. Isla pointed to the window. That's the garden. In spring, we can plant vegetables if you want. And this shelf is for your books. We can get more this weekend. Leo walked to the bookend, touching it with one finger. The same careful gesture from Brightwood. Then he turned, and for the first time looked directly at Mateo. Did you make this? I did. Mateo leaned against the doorframe, hands in his pockets, casual, non-threatening. I make furniture and things out of wood. That's my job. If you ever want to learn, I have a workshop in the garage. The boy processed this. I don't know how to make things. Me neither, when I was your age. But I learned. You could too if you wanted. No pressure, though. You can just come watch if that's better. Leo nodded slowly, turned back to the room, started unpacking his garbage bag with the mechanical movements of someone who'd done this too many times. 3 changes of clothes, 2 books with bent covers, a stuffed elephant so worn its fur was matted. He arranged everything in the dresser with careful precision, like they might disappear if he wasn't exact about placement. Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat. I'll leave you to settle in. I'll call next week to schedule a check-in. To Leo, she said softly, you know my number if you need anything, okay? The boy nodded, but he didn't look up from his unpacking. Some part of him had already learned not to trust that adults would stay. After Mrs. Patterson left, the house felt too quiet. Leo sat on his bed looking lost. Isla and Mateo exchanged glances. Now what? They hadn't really discussed this part, how to actually parent, how to welcome a traumatized child into a house built on lies. Are you hungry? Isla asked. We could make dinner together. Not hungry. Leo's voice was flat. Okay, well, if you want to rest, that's fine too. Or, she looked around the room desperate, we could read one of your books? Or show you the rest of the house? I want to stay here. It was a dismissal, clear as day. Isla's throat tightened. She'd imagined this moment so many different ways, but never like this. Never this careful distance from a child she already loved. Mateo touched her elbow gently. Let's give him space, he murmured. Then louder to Leo, we'll be downstairs if you need anything. Bathroom is across the hall. Your door can be closed or open, whatever you prefer. This is your home. You make the rules in your room. They retreated downstairs. Isla made it to the kitchen before the tears started. Not sad tears exactly, overwhelming tears. Relief and terror and love and inadequacy all mixed together. Mateo wrapped her in a hug without asking, and she buried her face against his flannel shirt. He hates us, she whispered. He doesn't know us yet. That's different. Mateo's voice rumbled in his chest. You did it. He's here. He's safe. The rest will come. Upstairs, a door clicked shut, not slammed, just closed. Isla pulled back, wiping her eyes. What do we do now? Now we let him set the pace. Mateo released her slowly. Make dinner. Be nearby. Show him we're not going anywhere. They made spaghetti even though Leo said he wasn't hungry, set 3 places at the table, waited. At 6:30, small footsteps on the stairs. Leo appeared in the kitchen doorway, elephant tucked under his arm, looking uncertain. "Still not hungry," he announced, but his eyes lingered on the garlic bread. "That's okay." Isla pulled out his chair. "You can sit with us anyway. You don't have to eat." Leo climbed into the chair. Isla and Mateo made stilted conversation about nothing. The rain, Mateo's current project, the neighbor's cat, acting normal. After 10 minutes, Leo took a piece of garlic bread, then another. By the time dinner ended, his plate was empty, and something in his shoulders had relaxed, just slightly. That night, Isla tucked Leo into bed with the worn elephant in a nightlight shaped like stars. "Sleep well," she whispered. "We're right across the hall if you need anything." Leo stared at the ceiling. "How long can I stay?" The question gutted her. "Forever if you want to. This is your home now, Leo. We're your family." "People always say that." His voice was very small. "Then I have to leave." Isla wanted to promise it would be different this time, but Leo had heard promises before. Instead, she just squeezed his hand. "I know, but we're going to try really, really hard to make it true." In their bedroom, Isla changed into pajamas while Mateo was in the bathroom, then slipped under the covers on her designated side. When he emerged, she kept her eyes firmly on her book. He climbed in on his side, maintaining careful distance. The bed was big enough that they didn't have to touch, but she could feel the warmth of him, hear his breathing. They'd shared space 1,000 times, but never like this. Never in a bed they'd sleep in together for the next 3 months, pretending to be in love while a traumatized child across the hall decided whether to trust them. "You did good today," Mateo said into the darkness. "We both did." Isla set her book down. "Mateo? Thank you for all of this. I know it's not—" "Don't." His voice was quiet but firm. "Don't thank me. We're family now. All 3 of us. That's not something you thank someone for." Family. The words settled over them like a blanket. Isla closed her eyes, listening to rain and Mateo's breathing and Leo's small sounds from across the hall. This house of lies and paperwork and impossibility. This family they'd forged from desperation and hope. She fell asleep wondering which parts were fake and which were real. Wondering if maybe in the end it didn't matter, because Leo was home, and that, at least, was true. Morning light crept through the kitchen windows, turning everything amber. Isla stood at the stove in Mateo's old Timbers t-shirt, flipping pancakes and trying to remember how to breathe normally. First morning as a family. First breakfast in this house that was supposed to feel like home, but mostly felt like a stage set. Leo appeared in the doorway, elephant under one arm, hair sticking up in 7 directions. He stopped when he saw Mateo already at the table, coffee in hand, looking too comfortable in sweatpants in bedhead. The boy's shoulders tensed. "Morning, Leo." Mateo's voice was deliberately casual. "You like pancakes?" Leo nodded slowly, didn't move closer. Isla plated pancakes shaped like rockets. She'd found a cutter in Mateo's kitchen drawer last night, probably left over from some ex-girlfriend's optimistic domesticity. "Come sit. I made your favorite." "You don't know my favorite." The words came out sharper than Leo probably intended. The kitchen went quiet except for rain starting up outside. Isla exchanged a quick glance with Mateo. This was it, the test. She set the plate down at Leo's spot, then sat across from him. "You're right, I don't know yet, but I'm going to learn, so tell me, what do you like on pancakes?" Leo studied the rockets warily, climbed into his chair. "Syrup, no butter." "Good to know." Mateo grabbed the syrup, slid it across. "I'm a butter guy myself. Isla drowns everything in syrup and then complains it's too sweet." "I do not," Isla started, then caught Leo watching them, almost curious. She made an exaggerated face. "Okay, maybe I do, but that's what makes it good." The boy's mouth twitched, not quite a smile but close. He poured syrup carefully, precisely, then took a bite. Chewed, swallowed. They're okay. Coming from Leo, okay felt like a standing ovation. Isla's chest loosened slightly. They ate in careful quiet, the kind of silence that felt like a truce. Mateo mentioned he had to work in his shop today, but Leo was welcome to come watch if he got bored. Isla said she had illustration work, but could do it at the kitchen table if Leo wanted company. Giving options, no pressure. Everything designed to say, "You're safe here," without pushing. Leo finished his pancakes, carried his plate to the sink, stood there uncertain like he was waiting for something. "You can go play in your room if you want," Isla offered. "Or watch TV, or just whatever you feel like." "What do you do on Saturdays?" Leo asked. The question caught her off guard. We usually..." She looked at Mateo. What did their fake marriage do on Saturdays? What would a real family do? "We're pretty boring," Mateo said easily. "I work on house projects. Isla paints. Sometimes we go to the farmer's market. Or Powell's if it's raining. Nothing exciting." Leo processed this. "Can I come to the shop? Just to watch. I won't touch anything." Something in Mateo's expression softened. "Yeah, buddy, you can come." An hour later, Isla watched from the shop doorway as Mateo showed Leo the different tools, explaining their purposes in simple terms. The boy stood with his elephant tucked tight, listening with intense focus. When Mateo let him hold a piece of sandpaper, demonstrating how to smooth wood, Leo's small hands moved with surprising care. "Like this?" Leo's voice was barely audible over the radio playing classic rock in the corner. "Exactly like that. You're a natural." Mateo's praise was genuine, not patronizing. "Keep going. That piece is for a bookshelf I'm building, for a client's kid's room." "Like mine?" "Similar, but yours is better because we did it together. Isla and me." Mateo adjusted Leo's grip slightly. "Every time you look at those shelves, you can remember we wanted you to have them." Leo didn't respond, but his shoulders relaxed incrementally. Isla backed away quietly, leaving them to their careful dance of connection. In the kitchen, she tried to focus on her illustration work, a picture book about a lost fox, but kept glancing toward the garage, watching Mateo's patience, Leo's tentative trust. This was what she'd wanted, this exact picture, but something about it felt too right, too real, and that scared her more than she wanted to admit. Sunday afternoon, Leo stood in the garage watching Mateo measure a piece of cedar. The rain had finally stopped, leaving everything smelling like wet earth and possibility. Isla had gone to the store, leaving them alone for the first time. Leo hadn't moved from his spot by the door, elephant clutched tight. "You can come closer," Mateo said without looking up. "I promise nothing will bite." "My caseworker said you're a carpenter." "Close. I restore old houses, fix things that are broken, make them beautiful again." Mateo marked the wood with his pencil. "Like your bookshelf. That wood came from a house built in 1920. Been around longer than your grandparents, probably." Leo inched forward, curiosity winning over caution. "Why do you fix old things? Why not just buy new?" "Because old things have stories, and someone loved them once. They deserve a second chance." Mateo finally looked at the boy. "Plus, new stuff is boring. Anyone can buy something perfect from a store. Takes skill to make broken things whole again." The metaphor wasn't subtle. Leo was 6, not stupid. But he didn't call it out, just moved closer, watching Mateo's hands work. "Could you teach me?" "Real teaching, not just watching." Mateo's chest went tight. "Yeah, I could do that. But we start small, safety first. No power tools until you're older. Deal?" "Deal." They shook on it solemnly. Mateo found a spare pair of safety glasses that were too big for Leo's small face, and a piece of scrap wood. Showed him how to hold sandpaper, how to work with the grain, how to feel when the wood was smooth enough. Leo worked with fierce concentration, tongue poking out slightly. My friend Tyler says his dad works in an office, Leo said after a while. He wears a tie and looks at computers. That's a good job. Mateo kept his voice neutral. Different than mine, but good. Tyler says his dad makes a lot of money. Here was the real question. The one about whether Mateo measured up, whether this family would be stable enough. Isla had shown him the financial disclosure forms. Her illustration income was decent, but irregular. Mateo's restoration business solid, but not flashy. Together they were comfortable, but not Tyler's dad rich. I make enough, Mateo said simply. Enough for this house, for good food, for books and art supplies, for whatever you need. Maybe not for everything you want, but enough for what matters. Leo considered this seriously. Isla said you have a truck. Yep, a old Ford. Needs some work but runs good. Tyler's dad has a BMW. Tyler's dad probably doesn't haul lumber, Mateo grinned. Hard to fit a sheet of plywood in a BMW. The corner of Leo's mouth lifted, actual smile, small but real. He went back to his sanding with renewed focus. After a minute, I like trucks better anyway. Something in Mateo's chest cracked open. He'd been prepared for Leo to reject him, to see him as inadequate or temporary. But this kid was giving him a chance, and that felt both terrifying and impossibly precious. Hey, Leo? Mateo waited until the boy looked up. I'm glad you're here. I know this is all weird and new, but I'm really glad Isla brought you home. Glad you're part of our family now. Leo's grip tightened on the sandpaper. His voice, when it came, was very small. You mean it? You're not just saying it because Isla wants me? I mean it. Mateo crouched down to Leo's level. I wanted you here too. Both of us did. That's why we said yes. That's why we're trying so hard to make this work. The boy searched his face for lies, that old soul wariness that broke Mateo's heart. Finally, he nodded, went back to sanding. But when Isla returned an hour later, grocery bags in hand, she found them still in the shop. Leo was talking, actual talking, not just one-word answers, about a book he'd read, and Mateo was listening like it was the most important story in the world. Isla stood in the doorway, watching her fake husband and the child she'd fought so hard for, and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. This wasn't part of the plan. The plan was temporary. The plan was paperwork. The plan didn't include the way Mateo looked at Leo, like he'd already decided to love him, like this wasn't pretend at all. The storm hit at midnight with the kind of violence that made the whole house shake. Thunder cracked like the sky breaking. Lightning turned the bedroom electric white. Isla jerked awake, heart racing, to find Mateo already sitting up beside her. Leo, they said simultaneously. Isla threw back the covers, but Mateo was already moving. They collided in the hallway outside Leo's room, just as a small, terrified scream cut through the thunder. Mateo got there first, pushing the door open to find Leo sitting up in bed, tears streaming, elephant clutched so tight its seams might split. Hey, you're okay. Mateo crossed to the bed in 3 strides. It's just a storm. You're safe. They're gonna take me back. Leo's voice was ragged with panic. The lightning means something bad. They always take me back when something bad happens. Isla's heart shattered. She knelt beside the bed, reaching for Leo's hand. Nobody's taking you anywhere. This is your home. A storm doesn't change that. But Leo was shaking, lost in whatever memory had been triggered. Mateo looked at Isla over the boy's head, helpless. Then thunder cracked again, and Leo flinched so hard he nearly fell off the bed. Okay, new plan. Mateo scooped Leo up, elephant and all. We're having a sleepover, all of us, in the big bed. Safety in numbers. He carried Leo across the hall before either of them could protest. Set him down in the middle of the king bed, then looked at Isla with a question in his eyes. She nodded. What else could they do? Leo was sobbing into his elephant, small body racked with fear. Isla climbed in on one side, Mateo on the other, Leo between them. The boy immediately curled into Isla, and she wrapped her arms around him, making soothing sounds. But every crack of thunder made him flinch. Want to know a secret? Mateo's voice was quiet under the storm. I used to be scared of storms too, when I was about your age. Leo's crying stuttered. Really? Really. My dad, he wasn't great, and he'd get angry during storms, loud. So I learned to hate them. Mateo shifted, getting comfortable. But then my abuela taught me something. She said storms are just the sky throwing a tantrum, getting all the bad feelings out, and after, everything is clean and fresh. The storm passes, and the world is better. The sky gets mad? Leo's voice was muffled against Isla's shoulder. Sure, sometimes we all get mad, even the sky. That's okay. What matters is that it passes. Mateo's hand found the space between Leo's shoulder blades, rubbing small circles. Want to count between the lightning and thunder? We can figure out how far away the storm is. They counted through 3 rounds of lightning, Leo's voice getting steadier each time. Isla met Mateo's eyes over Leo's head, and something passed between them. This moment was too intimate, too real. They were lying in bed together, comforting a child, and it felt less like performance and more like something she didn't have words for. Leo's breathing evened out gradually. The storm moved on, thunder growing distant. But the boy didn't move from between them, and neither Isla nor Mateo suggested he should. In the darkness, Mateo's hand was still on Leo's back, and Isla's arm was around them both. And somehow Isla's other hand had found Mateo's forearm, where it rested on the comforter. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For knowing what to do. For being... She stopped. For being perfect at this. For making it real. For making her believe in things that scared her. For being here. Mateo's thumb brushed across her wrist. Once. Deliberate. Where else would I be? Between them, Leo made a small sound and burrowed deeper into the blankets. Isla should have moved. Should have put distance between herself and Mateo now that Leo was calming. But Mateo's warmth was on one side, Leo's small, solid weight on the other, and moving felt impossible. She fell asleep like that, tangled in fake marriage and real tenderness, rain drumming on the roof like a heartbeat. When she woke at dawn, Leo had migrated completely onto her chest, one arm thrown over her, and Mateo's hand was still touching hers beneath the covers, fingers loosely intertwined. Neither of them mentioned it at breakfast. The parent-teacher conference was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Isla sat in a too-small chair beside Mateo in Ms. Rivera's classroom, surrounded by construction paper art and the alphabet in cheerful colors. Leo's teacher was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and the slightly frazzled air of someone who loved her job but was exhausted by it. Leo's adjustment has been remarkable, Ms. Rivera said, flipping through a folder. When he first enrolled, he barely spoke, wouldn't participate, but this week he volunteered to share about his weekend, about building something with his... She paused, checking her notes. With his dad. The word hit like a fist. Isla's breath caught. Beside her, Mateo went very still. He talks about you both quite a bit, Ms. Rivera continued, oblivious to the grenade she dropped. The yellow room, the bookshelf, how Mateo is teaching him to work with wood. He seems very secure in your home. That's good. Isla's voice came out strange. We want him to feel secure. There was an incident yesterday I wanted to mention. Ms. Rivera's expression shifted, concerned. During recess, another child, Tyler, made a comment about Leo not having a real family, that he was adopted. Leo became very upset. Another student, Mia, intervened and told Tyler that families come in all kinds. It resolved quickly, but I thought you should know. Mateo's jaw was tight. Is Tyler giving Leo trouble regularly? Not regularly, but there have been a few comments. You know how children can be. They don't always understand. Ms. Rivera softened. For what it's worth, Leo defended himself beautifully. He said that real families are the ones who choose you, that you and Isla chose him, so he's realer than anyone. Isla's eyes burned. Beside her, Mateo's hand found hers under the table, squeezing hard. The meeting wrapped up quickly after that. Ms. Rivera assured them Leo was thriving academically, socially, emotionally, a success story. They walked to the truck in silence, both processing. Mateo opened her door, then stood there not moving. He called me Dad. His voice was raw. To his class, he told them I'm his dad. I know. Isla didn't know what else to say. The weight of it was staggering. What do we do when... He stopped. When this ends. When the adoption is final and I'm not his dad anymore. When we dissolve this marriage and I become the guy who used to live there. What do we tell him? Isla didn't have an answer. They drove home in heavy quiet, both trapped in the same thought. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being fake. Leo believed in them, believed in the family they were pretending to be. And when the truth came out, when Mateo left and it was just Isla and Leo again, how would they explain that the love had been real, but the marriage hadn't? That Mateo had been playing a role, even if it looked exactly like the real thing. At home, Leo was waiting with the neighbor who'd been babysitting. He launched into excited chatter about his day, about Mia standing up for him, about the art project they were doing. Isla made dinner on autopilot. Mateo helped Leo with homework at the kitchen table. They moved through their evening routine like a real family because that's what they'd become. Accidentally, dangerously. That night after Leo was asleep, Isla found Mateo in his workshop. He was sanding something with vicious focus, jaw clenched. "We should talk about it," she said from the doorway. "Nothing to talk about. Sand, sand, sand. Kids settling in, that's good. Mateo, he'll understand eventually, is..." Finally he looked up, and his eyes were too bright. "When you explain that I was just helping out, that the marriage was temporary, he'll get it. Kids are resilient." Are they? The question came out sharper than she meant. Or do we just tell ourselves that so we don't feel so guilty about the damage we do? Mateo set down the sandpaper carefully, crossed to her. They stood in the doorway, too close, both hurting. "What do you want me to say? That I'm terrified I'm going to break that kid's heart? That every time he looks at me like I'm someone he can count on, I feel like a fraud? I know, Isla. I know what we're doing to him." Then what do? We keep going. We give him the best 90 days of his life. We make sure he's legally yours, safe and permanent. And then, his voice cracked, then we figure out how to break it to him gently. We stay friends, stay in his life somehow. Make sure he knows the love was real, even if the marriage wasn't. It was the plan, the logical plan, the plan that would break all three of them. Isla nodded, throat too tight for words. Went to bed alone because Mateo stayed in his workshop until dawn, sanding wood and trying to sand down the guilt that was building like splinters under his skin. Isla's 29th birthday arrived on a Saturday in November. She'd forgotten about it entirely until Leo appeared at breakfast with a card made from construction paper, covered in careful crayon drawings of rockets and books in a house that was probably supposed to be theirs. "Happy birthday," Leo announced, shoving the card at her. Mateo helped with spelling. The inside read, "Thank you for being my mom. Love, Leo." The word mom was traced over 3 times, like he wanted to make sure it was dark enough, real enough. Isla couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, just pulled Leo into a hug that made him squirm and laugh. Over his head she met Mateo's eyes. He was leaning against the counter with his coffee, expression soft. "We have plans today," Mateo said. "Birthday plans. So go get dressed, something warm." "What kind of plans?" Isla was suspicious of that smile. "The surprise kind. Come on, Leo, let's go set up." They disappeared into the garage. Isla changed into jeans and her favorite sweater, curiosity building. When she emerged, the garage was transformed. String lights hung from the rafters. A folding table was set up with a vinyl tablecloth covered in doodles Leo must have done. And there, in the center, was a cake. Homemade, slightly lopsided, frosted in what was probably supposed to be yellow but looked more like butter. "We made it ourselves," Leo said proudly. "It's supposed to be sunshine yellow. For your favorite color that's not really your favorite color." The callback to their very first conversation in Brightwood made Isla's eyes sting. "It's perfect." "Wait, there's more." Mateo pulled something from behind his workbench. A frame. Inside was an illustration, her work, from 3 years ago. A piece she'd sold to a gallery opening where they'd met. "Found it at an estate sale last month. Thought you might want it back." The illustration showed a girl walking through a forest of paper trees, everything origami folded and delicate. It was from her Fragile Things series, back when she was processing her parents' death. Back before she'd learned to build something stronger from the grief. She'd forgotten this piece existed. "How did you—" Her voice failed. "I remembered it." Mateo's gaze was steady, intense. "You told me once it was your favorite, that you regretted selling it. So when I saw it, I grabbed it." He'd been thinking about her, remembering conversations from years ago, hunting estate sales for something that mattered to her. This wasn't fake husband behavior. This was something else entirely. They ate cake in the garage while rain drummed on the roof. Leo told elaborate stories about a superhero he'd invented who could turn invisible but only when nobody was looking, which defeated the whole purpose. Mateo laughed so hard he snorted, which made Leo laugh harder. Isla watched them, memorizing this moment, trying to hold on to it before everything inevitable happened. "Speech," Leo demanded. "Birthday people have to make speeches." "Do they?" Isla raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, Mateo told me. It's tradition." Isla shot Mateo a look. He grinned, unrepentant. She stood, cake plate in hand, and looked at these two people who'd become her entire world in a handful of weeks. "Okay, speech." She took a breath. "I'm 29 today, and if you'd asked me last year where I'd be now, I would have said alone. Working in my studio, maybe visiting Leo at Brightwood if I was brave enough to keep showing up after all the rejections. I wouldn't have imagined this." She gestured around the garage, at the lights and the lopsided cake, and the illustration that proved Mateo saw her. Really saw her. "I wouldn't have imagined getting to be Leo's mom, or living in this house, or having a family. I thought that kind of thing happened to other people. Not me." Her throat was getting tight, but she pushed through. "So thank you, both of you, for giving me the best birthday I've had since I had birthdays with my parents. For making me feel like I belong somewhere again." Leo hugged her waist. Mateo stood, crossed to her, and pulled her into his arms. The hug lasted too long. His hand cradled the back of her head, and she could feel his heartbeat against her cheek. When he pulled back, his eyes were too dark, too intense. "Happy birthday is," he said quietly, "just for her." That night, after Leo was asleep, Isla found the framed illustration sitting on her dresser. Beside it, a small note in Mateo's handwriting. "Still making beautiful things out of broken pieces. Proud of you." She sat on the edge of the bed, holding the note, and let herself admit the truth she'd been avoiding. She wasn't pretending anymore. Somewhere between the courthouse wedding and teaching Leo to make cinnamon toast and sleeping tangled together during storms, she'd fallen in love with Mateo. Actually in love. The terrifying, irrevocable kind. And she had no idea if he felt the same, or if he was just very good at playing his role. The almost kiss happened on a Wednesday. They were cleaning up after dinner, Leo already upstairs doing homework. Isla was washing dishes while Mateo dried, their familiar rhythm from years of friendship. But everything felt different now. Charged. Every accidental brush of hands was electric. "You've got—" Mateo reached out, thumb brushing soap suds from her cheek. Isla froze. His hand lingered, and suddenly they were standing too close. The kitchen too quiet except for water running. Mateo's eyes dropped to her mouth. She watched him war with himself, saw the moment he decided. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't pull away. Their lips met softly, tentative, testing. Then Mateo's hand slid into her hair, and Isla made a small sound, and suddenly the kiss wasn't tentative at all. It was desperate and searching. In 3 years of tension, in 10 years of friendship, and every single feeling she'd been trying to ignore. She gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, and he groaned against her mouth. Then, footsteps on the stairs. They jumped apart like teenagers caught. Leo appeared in the doorway, clutching a math worksheet. "I don't understand problem 7. "I've got it." Isla's voice came out breathless. She couldn't look at Mateo. "Let me see." She followed Leo to the table, aware of Mateo standing frozen by the sink. They worked through the math problem, something about fractions that Isla could barely focus on. Leo chattered about his day, oblivious. When he finally went back upstairs, Isla stood there, heart racing, not sure what came next. Mateo cleared his throat. We're just acting, right?" The words tumbled out too fast. For Leo, in case he saw, we're supposed to look like a married couple. That's all that was. She watched something shudder in his expression. "Right, yeah, acting. We should probably do more of that. For authenticity." Exactly, authenticity. Isla turned back to the dishes, scrubbing a plate that was already clean. "Makes sense." The water ran. Neither of them moved. Finally, Mateo set down his towel. "I'm going to work in the shop for a bit." He left through the back door. Isla stood at the sink, fingers pressed to her lips, and tried to convince herself she hadn't just made a terrible mistake. But the way Mateo had kissed her back, that hadn't felt like acting. That had felt like something she couldn't name. Like something that would make everything more complicated. Like something that scared her more than losing Leo ever had. Upstairs, she checked on Leo, found him already asleep, homework scattered on his bed. She tucked him in gently, moving the papers to his desk. On top was a drawing, their family, stick figures holding hands. Isla, Mateo, Leo in the middle. Above them, he'd written in careful letters, "My forever family." She carried the drawing to her bedroom and set it on the nightstand. Looked at the target ring still on her finger, heard the distant sound of Mateo's saw from the garage. This house of lies had become something too real to untangle, and she had no idea how to tell him that she didn't want to untangle it anymore, that she wanted this fake marriage to become real, that she loved him, that she'd maybe always loved him, and this whole charade had just forced her to finally admit it. Mrs. Gable's surprise visit came 2 days later, and Isla could tell immediately something was wrong. The social worker's expression was carefully neutral as she asked to speak with them privately. Leo was at school, thank God. Whatever this was, Leo didn't need to see it. They sat in the living room, the three of them. Mrs. Gable opened her folder slowly, and Isla's stomach dropped. "I've received a concern," Mrs. Gable said carefully. "Anonymous, regarding the legitimacy of your marriage." The words hung in the air like poison. Mateo's hand found Isla's, squeezing hard. "What kind of concern?" His voice was steady, but Isla felt him shaking. "The caller suggested your marriage was one of convenience, arranged specifically to meet adoption requirements." Mrs. Gable watched them closely. "I'm obligated to investigate any claims of fraud." "That's," Isla started, but Mateo cut her off. "That's ridiculous." He leaned forward, intensity radiating off him. "Who called? What proof do they have?" "I can't disclose the source, and they didn't provide proof, which is why I'm here, to observe." Mrs. Gable's pen hovered over her notepad. "Talk me through a typical day in your marriage." They did. Isla described mornings, who woke first, Mateo, who made coffee, both, differently, a whole negotiation. Who got Leo ready for school? Tag team. Mateo talked about evenings, about how Isla sang off key while cooking, and he did dishes, and Leo did homework at the table. They painted a picture of domesticity that was true because they'd been living it for 2 months now. But Mrs. Gable wasn't convinced. Where do you sleep? Master bedroom, Isla said. King bed. And you're comfortable with that arrangement, even though this marriage is quite new? The trap was subtle, but there. Isla's mind raced. Too comfortable, and they've been living together before marriage. Red flag. Not comfortable, and the marriage seemed forced. She opened her mouth, unsure which lie to tell. We've been sleeping together for over a year, Mateo said bluntly. Before we got married, is that what you want to know? Whether this is some celibate arrangement? It's not. We're in love. We share a bed. We have for a long time. Heat flooded Isla's face. Mrs. Gable made a note, expression unreadable. I see. And the timing of your marriage, right before adoption proceedings, that's purely coincidental? No, Isla found her voice. It's not coincidental. Leo is why we finally got married, but not because we needed to fake something, because she looked at Mateo, at the man who'd turned his life upside down for her, and let herself say the truth. Because becoming Leo's parents made us realize we wanted to be a family, that we were ready for that commitment. Leo didn't force us together, he just gave us a reason to stop being scared. Mateo's thumb stroked across her knuckles. His eyes were too bright. Mrs. Gable studied them for a long moment. Then she closed her folder. I believe you. For what it's worth, I think whoever called is either mistaken or malicious. Your home is stable. Leo is thriving. I see no evidence of fraud. She stood. But I do need to note this in my report. The final adoption hearing is in 3 weeks. The judge will see this complaint. You should be prepared to address it. After she left, Isla and Mateo sat in stunned silence. Finally, Isla spoke. Who would call? I don't know, but they almost, Mateo's voice was raw. They almost destroyed everything. We need to be more convincing. The words tasted like ash. In court, for the judge, we need to prove this is real. How much more convincing can we get? Mateo stood pacing. We live together, sleep together, apparently, according to me. We're raising Leo. What more do they want? They want love. Isla stood too, facing him. Real, obvious, undeniable love. The kind you can't fake. Their eyes locked. The air between them was electric, dangerous. Everything unsaid pushing at the walls. Isla. Mateo stepped closer. Don't. She put up a hand, stopping him. Please don't say something we can't take back. Not when everything is so... When Leo might... Her voice broke. I can't lose him, Mateo. I can't. Whatever we have to do, whatever we have to be, I'll do it. Even if it means what? He was close now, too close. Even if it means pretending so hard you forget what's real? Even if it means lying to yourself about what you feel? I'm not. You are. His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You're so scared of losing Leo that you won't let yourself want anything else. But I'm scared too, terrified, because I don't know how to keep being your fake husband when every single part of this feels real to me. The confession hung between them. Isla's breath caught. Before she could respond, before she could process what he just admitted, his phone rang. The school. Leo was sick. Could someone pick him up? The moment shattered. They grabbed keys and coats, falling back into their roles as parents. But the words stayed, echoing in the space between them. Real to me. Real to me. Real to me. And Isla had no idea what to do with that. Leo had the flu. For 3 days, he ran a fever and threw up and couldn't keep anything down. Isla and Mateo took shifts sitting with him, reading stories in quiet voices, replacing cool cloths on his forehead. On the second night, exhausted and scared, Leo asked for both of them. They ended up on Leo's bed, one on each side, the boy between them burning up with fever. Isla hummed the lullaby her mother used to sing. Mateo told rambling stories about his abuela's ranch in New Mexico, and Leo, delirious and small, grabbed both their hands. "Promise you won't leave," he whispered. "Even if I'm sick, even if I'm bad, promise." Isla's heart cracked open. "We promise, baby. We're not going anywhere." "Both of you?" "Both of us," Mateo said firmly. "You're stuck with us, buddy, for good." Leo fell asleep holding on to them. They sat there for another hour, not wanting to move, not wanting to break whatever spell was keeping him feeling safe. Finally, Mateo spoke softly. "We need to talk about court." "I know. We need to coordinate our story. Make sure—" "I know, Mateo." Isla looked at him over Leo's sleeping form. "I know what we have to do." "Do you?" His voice was careful. "Because I'm not sure I do anymore. I thought I could walk away after the adoption, sign the divorce papers and go back to being your friend. But He stopped, started again. "I don't want to leave. Not this house, not Leo, not you." The confession was quiet, devastated. Isla couldn't breathe. "But I will," he continued, "if that's what you need. If you want me to play the friend who helped out and then disappeared, I'll do it. For you and Leo, I'll be whatever you need me to be." Isla wanted to tell him she needed him to stay, needed him to be her husband for real, not for paperwork. But fear locked the words in her throat. What if she admitted her feelings and he was just confused? What if this was all proximity in Leo and playing house? What if she was the only one who'd fallen? "Let's just get through court first," she whispered. "Then we'll figure it out." Mateo nodded, looked away. Something in his expression went carefully blank, and Isla knew she just made another mistake. But Leo was sick, and the adoption hearing was looming, and she couldn't untangle what was real from what was convenient. Couldn't risk everything on feelings that might be just another performance. That night after Leo's fever finally broke, Isla lay awake in the bed she shared with Mateo. He was sleeping on his side of the mattress, careful not to touch her. The distance between them felt like miles. She stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out when protecting her heart had started to feel like the biggest risk of all. The adoption hearing was scheduled for a cold Thursday in December. Isla wore a navy dress that made her look responsible. Mateo wore a suit that made him look like someone's husband. Leo stayed home with Mateo's brother Luis, blissfully unaware that everything hinged on the next 2 hours. The courtroom was smaller than expected. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s, with sharp eyes and reading glasses on a chain. Mrs. Gable testified first, presenting her reports. Stable home, thriving child, strong parental bond. Then she mentioned the complaint, the anonymous call suggesting fraud. Judge Morrison's gaze sharpened. "Mrs. Mercer, Mr. Reyes, please approach." They stood at the bench, hands clasped. Isla could feel Mateo shaking, or maybe that was her. "I've reviewed the concerns raised about your marriage," Judge Morrison said, "and I'll be frank, the timing is suspicious. Marriage just before adoption proceedings began, no prior engagement announcement. You, Mrs. Reyes Mercer, filed 3 previous applications as a single parent, all denied. Then suddenly you're married and reapplying. You can see how this looks." "Your Honor," Isla started. "Let me finish." The judge's voice was stern, but not unkind. "However, I've also reviewed the evidence, your financial integration, your shared household, the testimony from Leo's teacher, the neighbors, the pediatrician. All of it paints a picture of a genuine family unit." She paused. "Tell me in your own words why you married him." The question was directed at Isla. She looked at Mateo, at this man who demolished his comfortable bachelor life for her, and felt every careful wall crack. "Because I couldn't imagine my life without him anymore," she said quietly. "I've known Mateo for 10 years. He's been my best friend, my emergency contact, The person I called when I got rejected the third time. The person who showed up with Thai food and let me cry. And when I was preparing to bring Leo home, I realized I wanted Mateo there. Not as a friend helping out, as a partner, as Leo's dad, as my husband. The adoption gave me the courage to finally admit that, but the love was already there. Judge Morrison turned to Mateo. And you? Why marry her? Mateo's voice was steady, certain. Because the alternative was watching her build a family I wasn't part of. Watching her parent a kid who called someone else dad. And I realized I didn't want to be on the outside anymore. I wanted in. All the way in. Marriage, parenting, the whole terrifying package. With Isla, specifically, not with anyone else, just her. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison studied them, those sharp eyes missing nothing. Isla held her breath. Mr. Reyes, the judge said, if this adoption is granted, and Mrs. Reyes, Mercer later files for divorce, you understand you'll still have parental rights. You'll still be Leo's father legally. This isn't something you can walk away from. I understand. Mateo's hand tightened on Isla's. And I don't want to walk away. Leo is my son now. Paperwork or not, I'm in this for life. More silence. Then Judge Morrison smiled. Small but genuine. I've been doing this job for 30 years. I've seen every kind of family. And I'll tell you what I tell everyone. Family isn't about biology or timing or checking the right boxes. It's about showing up, consistently. Love in action, not just words. She looked at her notes. You two have been showing up for Leo for months now, and more importantly, he's thriving. That's what matters. She banged her gavel. Adoption granted. Leo Mercer is legally and permanently the son of Isla Reyes Mercer and Mateo Reyes. Congratulations. The words didn't sink in immediately. Then Isla was crying, and Mateo was hugging her, and Mrs. Gable was shaking their hands with actual warmth. They signed papers in a daze, collected copies of the adoption decree, walked out of the courthouse into cold December air. We did it, Isla whispered. Leo is ours. Really ours. Yeah. Mateo's voice was strange. He's ours. They stood on the courthouse steps, and something should have felt victorious. But all Isla could think about was what came next. The judge had assumed they'd stay married, had asked about divorce like it was hypothetical, and Mateo had said he was in this for life. But they'd never discussed life. They discussed 90 days. They discussed adoption being final. They discussed quietly dissolving the marriage once Leo was safe. Mateo, she started. Let's go get our son, he said, not meeting her eyes. Tell him the good news. They drove home in silence, heavy with everything unsaid, and Isla realized with sudden clarity that the hard part wasn't over. The hard part was just beginning, because now they had to figure out what happened to a fake marriage when every single part of it had become real, except for the part where they'd never actually talked about wanting it to be. The part where Isla loved him, but didn't know if he loved her back. The part where Mateo had said, for life, in court, but might have just been performing one last time. The part where they were legally Leo's parents, but had never decided what they were to each other. She looked at Mateo's profile as he drove, jaw tight, eyes on the road, and she knew they couldn't keep avoiding this conversation much longer. But first, they had to tell a 6-year-old boy that he finally got to keep his family. And that part, at least, was real. Leo's reaction to the adoption news was quieter than Isla expected. He listened as they explained the judge's decision, that he was officially theirs now, forever. Then he nodded once and went back to his drawing, like he'd been waiting for them to take it back, and when they didn't, he simply accepted it as fact. It was only later, when Isla came to tuck him in, that she found him crying into his elephant. Hey. She sat on the bed, hand on his back. What's wrong? I thought you'd be happy. I am happy. Leo's voice was muffled. That's why I'm crying. Miss Mercer at Brightwood said sometimes people cry when they're happy. I didn't believe her, but I do now. Isla's chest ached. She gathered him close. This boy who was hers now, really hers. You're allowed to cry for any reason, Leo. Happy, sad, scared, all of it. Are you and Mateo going to stay married? The question came out of nowhere, small and terrified. Now that the adoption is done, Tyler said his parents got divorced. He said families break sometimes. Every muscle in Isla's body locked. This was it, the moment where she had to decide what lie to tell. But looking at Leo's face, at the trust he was offering, she couldn't do it anymore. I don't know, she said honestly. Mateo and I, we love you so much, and we love each other. But sometimes love is complicated. Sometimes grown-ups have to figure things out. But you won't send me back? Leo's grip on the elephant tightened. Even if you and Mateo aren't together, I'm still yours? You are always mine. Isla pressed a kiss to his forehead. No matter what happens with Mateo and me, you're my son. Forever. That's what the judge said today. Nobody can change that now. Leo nodded slowly, seemed satisfied. But as Isla left, she heard him whisper to his elephant, I hope they figure it out. I like having a dad. The words followed her downstairs where Mateo was washing dishes. He looked up when she entered, something careful in his expression. Leo okay? He's scared we're going to get divorced. The words came out flat. He asked me directly. Mateo's hands stilled in the soapy water. What did you tell him? That we'd figure it out. Isla leaned against the counter, exhausted. Because I didn't know what else to say. Because we haven't talked about what happens now. We said we'd get divorced quietly. After the adoption was final, Mateo's voice was carefully neutral. That was always the plan. That was the plan when this was fake. Isla forced herself to meet his eyes. But is it still fake, Mateo? Because it doesn't feel fake anymore. Not to me, not to Leo. And I don't think it feels fake to you either. The air between them crystallized. Mateo pulled his hands from the water, dried them slowly. What do you want me to say, I want you to tell me the truth. Her voice shook. Are you staying because you want to, or because you think you have to? Because Leo calls you dad and you feel obligated? Because I need you for the paperwork? Jesus, Isla. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. You really think I'd spend 3 months playing house out of obligation? You think I'd tell a judge I wanted parental rights for life because of paperwork? Then why won't you say it? The question burst out too loud. Why won't you just tell me what you want? Because I can't keep guessing. I can't keep performing this marriage if I don't know what it is anymore. Mateo stared at her, something raw and desperate in his expression. You want to know what I want? I want to come home to you and Leo every day. I want to teach him woodworking and help with his homework and watch him grow up. I want to sleep in our bed and fight about whose turn it is to do dishes and grow old in this house we built. I want you, Isla. Not fake, not temporary. I want the real thing. The confession hung between them, devastating in its honesty. Isla couldn't breathe. But here's what I'm terrified of, Mateo continued, voice cracking. What if you don't want that? What if you needed me for the adoption and now you're stuck with me? What if the only reason you're considering staying married is because Leo loves me and you don't want to break his heart? I can't. He stopped, chest heaving. I can't be your husband out of convenience, I'd rather divorce and stay your friend than live with you while you secretly wish I'd leave. That's not, Isla started, but he kept going. I've been in love with you for 3 years. Real love, not friendly love. And watching you prepare for Leo, watching you be a mom, watching you build this life, it's made me more in love with you every single day. But I never said anything because I knew you didn't see me that way. You saw me as safe, as your best friend, as the guy who wouldn't leave. And that was enough until we got married, and I had to pretend it was fake when every single part of me wanted it to be real. The kitchen was silent except for the faucet dripping. Isla stared at him, processing. 3 years. He'd loved her for 3 years and never said anything. And she'd been so blind, so focused on not risking their friendship, that she'd never let herself notice. "I do see you that way," she whispered. "I have for, I don't even know how long. Maybe always. Maybe since that gallery opening when you made me laugh after I spilled wine on you. But I was scared. Scared of losing you if it didn't work. Scared of wanting something I didn't think I deserved. And then this whole thing started and I thought you were just being kind, playing a role. I didn't know it was real for you too." Mateo's eyes were too bright. "It's real for me. All of it. Has been since day one. For me too." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. "I love you, Mateo. Not fake married love, not grateful love, not convenient love, just love. The kind that makes me want to stay married to you for real. The kind that makes me hope this was never actually fake at all." The space between them evaporated. Mateo crossed to her in 2 strides, hands framing her face, and kissed her like he'd been holding back for years. Which Isla realized dimly he had been. This kiss was nothing like the interrupted one in the kitchen. This was confession and promise, and 3 years of want finally allowed to be real. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Mateo rested his forehead against hers. "So we're not getting divorced? Not unless you want to remarry me immediately after, so I can have a wedding where I actually mean the vows." Isla's laugh was half sob. "God, we're idiots. We could have been doing this the whole time. We were busy pretending." Mateo's thumb brushed her cheek. "We're pretty committed to the bit. The worst actors in history. The best fake marriage in history." He kissed her again, softer this time. "I love you. For real. Forever. I'm saying it now so there's no confusion. I love you too." The words felt like coming home. For real. Forever. Upstairs, a door opened. Small footsteps on the landing. Leo's voice, sleepy. "Are you guys fighting?" They broke apart, guilty. But Leo was standing at the top of the stairs in his rocket ship pajamas, elephant under one arm, looking more curious than scared. "Not fighting," Mateo called up. "Talking, working things out." "Did you figure it out?" Leo came down slowly, cautious. "Are you still married?" Isla and Mateo looked at each other. Some silent conversation passed between them. Then Mateo crouched down to Leo's level. "Yeah, buddy, we figured it out. We're staying married. For real this time, if that's okay with you." Leo studied them both seriously. Then he launched himself at Mateo, hugging tight. "It's okay with me. I like when we're all together." "Me too," Mateo said roughly, arms wrapped around the boy. He reached out, pulling Isla into the hug. "Me too, buddy." They stood in the kitchen, 3 people who'd found each other through desperation and paperwork and hope. A family that started as fiction and became the truest thing any of them had ever known. And for the first time since this whole thing began, Isla let herself believe it would last. Not because some judge said so, not because of adoption papers or marriage certificates, but because they'd chosen each other, really chosen each other. And they'd keep choosing each other every single day. The conversation should have been the end, the resolution. But 2 weeks later, Isla woke at 3 a.m. to find Mateo's side of the bed empty. She found him in Leo's room, sitting in the chair by the window, watching the boy sleep. "Can't sleep?" Isla whispered from the doorway. Mateo startled, then shook his head, gestured for her to join him. She crossed to the window, looking out at the dark street. Snow had started falling, rare for Portland. Everything looked clean and new. "I keep thinking about what you said," Mateo said quietly, "about not knowing if this was real. And I realized I never actually asked you to stay married to me. Not properly. We just decided to stop pretending. but that's not the same as choosing it. Mateo, let me finish. He stood, pulled something from his pocket, a small box. Isla's heart stopped. I bought this 3 weeks ago, before court, before any of the confessions. I was going to give it to you after the hearing and ask you, really ask you, if you wanted to stay married. Then everything happened, and I chickened out. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not Target silver, but real gold with a small stone that caught the moonlight. Simple. Perfect. I know we're already married, Mateo said, and I know we did this backwards. But Isla, he took her hand, and she felt tears starting. Will you stay married to me? Not for Leo, not for convenience, but because you want to spend your life with me? Because I want to spend mine with you, and I want a ring on your finger that means something. That means I chose you, that you chose me back. Isla was crying now, trying to be quiet for Leo. That's not fair. You're asking me the most important question of my life while I'm in penguin pajamas. You look beautiful in penguin pajamas. His voice was thick with emotion. You look beautiful in everything. So, will you? Yes. The word came out choked. Yes, I'll stay married to you. Yes to all of it. He slid the ring onto her finger, right next to the Target band they'd never taken off. It fit perfectly, like he'd measured somehow, which he probably had. Mateo was thorough like that. Isla threw her arms around him, and they held each other in the dark while their son slept peacefully nearby. I can't believe we almost threw this away, Isla whispered. I can't believe I almost let you go. But you didn't, Mateo pulled back, cradling her face. And I didn't. We figured it out. We're really doing this? Forever? Forever, he kissed her gently. Unless you get sick of me, then maybe just 50 or 60 years. She laughed against his mouth. I'll take forever. Behind them, a small voice. Are you guys being romantic? Miss Rivera says married people are romantic. They turned to find Leo sitting up in bed, watching them with a sleepy smile. He should have looked annoyed at being woken up. Instead, he looked content. Yeah, buddy, Mateo said. We're being romantic. Go back to sleep. Okay. Leo lay back down, snuggling his elephant. I'm glad you're staying married. I like our family. We like it too, Isla said softly. Go to sleep now. Within minutes, Leo's breathing evened out again. Isla and Mateo stood there a while longer, watching him. Then they went back to their room, to their bed, and Isla fell asleep with her head on Mateo's chest and a real ring on her finger. For the first time in years, she didn't have nightmares, didn't wake up afraid, because she wasn't alone anymore. Hadn't been alone for months, really. She'd just been too scared to notice. But she noticed now, and she wasn't letting go. Christmas came 2 weeks later. Their first as a real family. Isla had gone overboard with decorations, turning the house into something from a holiday movie. Mateo had built a train set that circled a tree. Leo had made ornaments in art class, snowflakes and rockets, and 3 stick figures holding hands. Christmas morning arrived with snow still falling outside. Leo woke them at 6 a.m., bouncing with excitement. They stumbled downstairs in pajamas, Mateo starting coffee while Isla turned on the tree lights. And there, under the branches, was a mountain of carefully wrapped presents. Santa came! Leo's shout of joy made Isla's chest squeeze. This was his first real Christmas, first one in a home, with parents who'd be there next year. They opened presents slowly, savoring it. Books and Legos for Leo, art supplies for Isla, new tools for Mateo. And then, at the very bottom, a small package with Leo's careful printing. For Mom and Dad. Isla's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a drawing, professionally framed in what must have been Mateo's work. It showed their house, smoke curling from the chimney, 3 stick figures visible through the window. Above, in Leo's careful letters, My Forever Home. Leo, her voice broke, this is It's perfect. I made it before the court thing, Leo explained, suddenly shy. But I wanted to wait until Christmas, until it was real, not just pretend real. Mateo pulled Leo into a hug. It's the best present anyone's ever given me. They hung it in the living room, right above the couch, a reminder of what they'd built, what they'd fought for, what they'd almost lost by being too afraid to admit what they wanted. That afternoon, Mateo's family came over, his brother Luis, his abuela who'd driven up from New Mexico. They'd been told about the adoption, but not the whole story. Didn't know the marriage had started as convenience. And watching abuela beam at Isla, watching Luis teach Leo how to play dominoes, Isla realized it didn't matter how it started. What mattered was where they were now. After dinner, after Leo had fallen asleep on the couch surrounded by wrapping paper, Isla and Mateo stood at the kitchen window washing dishes. Outside, snow fell steadily, turning Portland into something magical. Happy? Mateo asked, passing her a plate. Deliriously. She meant it. You? Yeah. He was quiet for a moment. You know what's weird? 3 months ago, I was single, living alone, working on my house projects, totally convinced I'd never get married because I was too scared of screwing it up. And now I have a husband and a son and a life I didn't even know I wanted. Wife, Isla corrected. You have a wife. Right. Wife, he grinned. Still getting used to that, the real version. Me too. She set down the dish towel, turning to face him fully. But I like it. The real version is better than I imagined. Even the part where I leave my tools everywhere? Even that part. Though we should probably talk about the circular saw that's been on the dining table for a week. It's a centerpiece, very rustic. He pulled her close, and she went willingly. Thank you, for taking a chance on this, on me, on all of it. Thank you for proposing fake marriage to save a kid you'd barely met. Best decision I ever made. He kissed her, slow and sweet. Second best was falling in love with you. What was first? Asking you to stay married for real, because you could have said no, and my life would have been a lot emptier. Isla thought about that, about all the moments they'd almost missed by being too careful, too afraid, about how close they'd come to dissolving this marriage and losing each other, about how lucky they were that Leo had needed them enough to push them together. He saved us, she said quietly. Leo, we saved him, but he saved us too. Made us brave enough to want something real. Yeah, Mateo's arms tightened around her. He did. In the living room, Leo stirred on the couch, mumbling something about rockets in his sleep. They watched him for a moment, this boy who'd become their whole world. We should get him to bed, Isla whispered. In a minute. Mateo wasn't ready to move yet. Let's just stay here for a minute. So they did. Standing in their kitchen, watching their son sleep under their Christmas tree, snow falling outside their window. A family built from paperwork and hope and love that had been hiding in plain sight for years. It wasn't the beginning Isla would have chosen, but looking at Mateo, at Leo, at the life they'd built in this house of truth and lies and everything in between, she wouldn't change a single thing. Even the fake parts had been real where it mattered, in the ways that would last. Spring came to Portland with its usual dramatic flair. Cherry blossoms everywhere, rain giving way to sunshine, the city remembering how to be beautiful. Isla stood in the garden, watching Mateo and Leo plant vegetables in the raised beds they'd built together. Tomatoes and beans and carrots. Things that would grow slowly, steadily, needing care. Leo was chattering about his science project, about soil and photosynthesis, words too big for his age. He'd thrived this year, made friends, joined the art club, started calling them mom and dad without hesitation. The nightmares had faded. The fear of being sent away had slowly loosened its grip. Mom, Leo called, can we plant pumpkins? For Halloween? Mateo says we have room. Dad says, Mateo corrected gently, and yes, we have room, but pumpkins take a long time to grow. You have to be patient. I can be patient. Leo was already digging with his small trowel. I'm good at waiting now. The words hit Isla harder than they should have. This boy who'd spent years waiting, for a family, for a home, for adults who would stay, finally felt secure enough to wait for pumpkins, to believe he'd still be here in October when they were ready to harvest. Mateo caught her eye over Leo's head, smiled. That smile that was just for her. The one that said, I know what you're thinking. The one that said, we did this together. Later, after Leo was asleep and the dirt was washed from under everyone's fingernails, Isla and Mateo sat on the porch with mugs of tea. The air smelled like rain coming, like earth and growing things. I was thinking, Mateo said carefully, about Leo's room. What about it? It's pretty yellow. Isla laughed. You hate the yellow. I knew it. You've been holding that in for months. I don't hate it. It's just, he struggled for words. It's very sunshiny. And Leo's getting older. Maybe he wants something different. Pirates or space or whatever 7-year-olds are into. So ask him. Isla leaned against his shoulder. He gets a say now. It's his room, his house, his family. Our family, Mateo corrected. Yours, mine, and his. Our family, she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence. Inside, the house creaked and settled. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. Normal sounds. Boring sounds. The sounds of a life that had stopped being a performance and become just life. You know what I realized? Isla said after a while. That day in the courthouse, when the judge granted the adoption, I was so focused on Leo becoming ours that I didn't really process the other part. What other part? That you became his father, legally, forever. Like, if something happened to me, Leo would still be your son. You'd still be his dad. She turned to look at him. That's not nothing, Mateo. You chose that. Knowing you could have just helped and walked away, you chose to be tied to him forever. Mateo was quiet for a long moment. I didn't choose to be tied to him. I chose to be his father. There's a difference. Being tied suggests obligation. Being his father is, he stopped. It's the best thing I've ever been. Isla's eyes stung. You're good at it, better than you think. I'm learning. He's patient with me. Mateo set down his tea. Sometimes I think about alternate timelines, where I said no that night, where I told you to find someone else to marry, and I wonder who I'd be in that timeline, what my life would look like. Lonely, probably, like mine would have been. Yeah, he pulled her closer. I'm glad we're in this timeline, the one where I was brave enough to say yes, where you were desperate enough to let me. Not desperate, hopeful, Isla corrected. I was hopeful you'd say yes, because deep down, some part of me knew that you were the one I wanted to do this with, build a family with, even if I couldn't admit it yet. The rain started then, soft at first. They stayed on the porch, watching it fall. Tomorrow, Leo would want to play in the puddles. Tomorrow, Mateo had a client meeting and Isla had an illustration deadline. Tomorrow, they'd pack lunches and do homework and argue about whose turn it was to take out the trash. All the mundane, beautiful, ordinary things that made up a real life. But tonight, they sat together while their son slept safely upstairs. And Isla thought about all the things she'd learned this year. That family wasn't blood. That home was built, not found. That love could start as pretend and become the realest thing you'd ever felt. That sometimes the best things in life came from being brave enough to fake it until it wasn't fake anymore. Leo's 7th birthday party was chaos. The house was full of kids from school, all running around with too much sugar in their systems. Mateo was managing the treasure hunt he designed, complete with pirate maps and chocolate coins. Isla was cutting cake and trying to prevent total disaster. This is insane, Mateo muttered as he passed her, chasing a kid who'd gotten into the garage. Why did we agree to this? Because you said Leo deserves a real birthday party, and I foolishly believed you could handle it. Isla grinned at his stressed expression. You're doing great, honey. I'm dying. This is what dying feels like. But he was smiling as he herded kids back toward the yard. An hour later, after the last parent had picked up their sugar-crashed child, the house fell blessedly quiet. Leo was sprawled on the couch, clutching his favorite gift, an elaborate wooden rocket ship that Mateo had spent 2 months building in secret. Best birthday ever, Leo declared. Can we do it again tomorrow? Absolutely not, Isla and Mateo said in unison. Leo giggled. He was getting taller, losing some of his baby roundness, growing into himself, more confident, more secure. Sometimes Isla looked at him and could barely remember the scared, withdrawn child from Brightwood. That Leo was still in there somewhere, but buried under layers of safety and love. Hey, Mom? Leo sat up, suddenly serious. Can I ask you something? Of course. Tyler's mom is getting remarried, and Tyler says he has to get used to a new dad now. His real dad moved away, and the new one is different. Leo picked at a thread on his shirt. Is that what happened with me? Did I have a different family before, and then I had to get used to you? The question was complicated, delicate. Isla looked at Mateo, who nodded. They'd known this conversation would come eventually. You did have a different family before, Isla said carefully. Your birth parents. I don't know much about them, but I know they couldn't take care of you the way you needed. That wasn't your fault. Sometimes adults have problems that make it hard for them to be parents. Do you know where they are? No, baby. I'm sorry. Leo processed this quietly. Do you think they wonder about me? Like, if I'm okay? Isla's heart broke. I hope, that somewhere they're glad you found a family who loves you, that they want you to be happy, even if they couldn't be the ones to make you happy. I'm happy, Leo said simply. I like this family better. Is that okay? To like this one better? That's completely okay. Mateo crouched in front of Leo. You're allowed to love the family you have, the one that shows up, the one that stays. Like you guys. Leo looked between them. You showed up and you stayed. Even when I was scared and sad and didn't know how to be in a family, you didn't leave. Never, Isla promised. We're not going anywhere, Leo. He nodded, satisfied, went back to playing with his rocket ship. But Isla and Mateo exchanged a glance over his head. These conversations would keep coming. Questions about his past, his birth family, his story, and they'd answer them honestly as they could, while making sure he knew, absolutely knew, that this family was real, permanent, his. That night after Leo was asleep, Isla found the drawing from Christmas. My forever home. She traced the stick figures with her finger, thinking about forever, about how it had seemed impossible once, and now it was just Tuesday, just another day in their life, just normal. What you thinking? Mateo wrapped his arms around her from behind. That we made it. She leaned back against him. Through the fake marriage and the adoption and the almost falling apart, we actually made it. Did you doubt we would? Every single day for the first 3 months, she turned in his arms. But not anymore. Now I'm just grateful that you asked me that night, that I said yes, that we were brave enough to fake it until it wasn't fake. Mateo kissed her softly. Best fake marriage in history. The only fake marriage that ended with real love. And a kid who calls me dad. His voice went rough. God is. 3 years ago, I was convinced I'd never be anyone's dad, that I'd screw it up too badly. And now I have this 7-year-old who trusts me completely, who thinks I know things, who wants to be like me when he grows up. You are someone to be like. Isla touched his face. You're an amazing father, an amazing husband, an amazing person. I'm a person who got lucky. He pulled her closer. Lucky that my best friend needed help. Lucky that I was dumb enough to suggest fake marriage. Lucky that somehow, impossibly, you fell in love with me back. Not luck, Isla corrected. Choice. We chose this. Every day we keep choosing this. Outside, Portland did its Portland thing. Drizzle, turning to rain, turning to stars peeking through clouds. Inside, their house was warm and safe and full. Full of love and wooden toys and dishes in the sink, and art projects drying on the counter. Full of life. The life they'd built together. On purpose. For keeps. 1 year after the adoption, they stood in the same courthouse. But this time, it was voluntary. This time, it was to renew their vows. Really renew them, the way people did when they wanted to recommit. When they wanted to say, I still choose you, in front of everyone who mattered. Mrs. Gable was there, beaming. Mateo's family. Isla's friends from her illustration career. Leo, in a tiny suit, holding both rings on a pillow. And Judge Morrison, who'd agreed to officiate, watching them with that same sharp-eyed warmth. We're here today, the judge began, to celebrate something rare and beautiful. A marriage that started as strategy and became substance. A family that built itself from need and became something unbreakable. Isla, Mateo, you've already proven your commitment to each other and to Leo. But today you're choosing to say it again, out loud, for the record. Isla looked at Mateo, at this man who'd saved her and let her save him right back. They'd written their own vows this time. No scripted lines, no careful performance. Mateo, she began, voice steady despite the emotion. 1 year ago, I stood in a courthouse and promised to love you until the adoption was final. I thought I was lying, thought I was playing a role, but I wasn't. I'd already fallen in love with you. I just didn't have the courage to admit it yet. So today I'm saying what I should have said then. I love you. Not because of Leo, not because of convenience, but because you're brave and kind and you see me, really see me, and I choose you, today, tomorrow, forever. Mateo's eyes were too bright. He cleared his throat. Isla, you asked me once why I offered to marry you. I said it was because I couldn't watch you lose Leo. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth is, I'd been looking for an excuse to be in your life more permanently, to stop pretending I was fine with being just your friend. And when you needed a husband, some part of me thought, this is my chance to show you what we could be. So thank you for taking a chance on fake marriage, for being brave enough to make it real, for choosing me back. I love you. I always have. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Judge Morrison cleared her throat roughly. Well, that's certainly clear. Leo, the rings? Leo stepped forward importantly, handed them each the rings they'd bought for this moment. Real rings, heavy and permanent. Isla slid hers onto Mateo's finger. He did the same for her, right next to the ring he'd given her on Christmas. By the power vested in me, Judge Morrison said, and because I'm absolutely certain this time, I pronounce you still married, as if there was any doubt. She smiled. You may kiss your wife, Mr. Reyes. Mateo kissed her, and the courthouse erupted in applause. Leo cheered loudest of all, and Isla thought this was the beginning she should have had, would have had, if they'd been brave enough from the start. But the journey to get here had been worth it. Every fake moment that became real, every lie that turned into truth. At the reception afterward, just a casual gathering at their house, Luis pulled Isla aside. You know, I suspected from the beginning. Suspected what? That it wasn't fake, not really. He grinned. The way Mateo looked at you at that first dinner, like he'd already decided, like he was all in before you even knew what the game was. I told him he was insane, but he said, Luis stopped, remembering. He said, maybe, but I'm not letting her do this alone. Not when I can help, not when I... And then he stopped himself. But I knew. He loved you even then. Isla looked across the yard to where Mateo was teaching Leo and 2 neighborhood kids how to build a birdhouse. Her husband, her partner, her best friend who'd become so much more. I loved him too, she admitted. I just didn't know it yet. Best kind of love story. Luis clinked his beer against her glass. The kind where you figure it out just in time. Later, much later, after everyone had gone home and Leo was asleep, Isla and Mateo sat on their porch. The same porch where they'd sat dozens of times before. But everything was different now. Settled, sure. Happy? Mateo asked. Disgustingly happy, she smiled. You? Deliriously happy. He pulled her close. Thank you for marrying me. Twice. Thank you for asking. Twice. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to Portland at night. Inside, their house held their sleeping son and their merged lives and every piece of themselves they'd given to this family. This real, honest, hard-won family. You know what's funny? Isla said. People always told me that family was the most important thing, but I didn't understand what that meant until I built one myself. Until I found you and Leo. Until I learned that family isn't who you're born with. It's who you fight for, who you choose, who chooses you back. And we chose each other, Mateo said. All three of us, on purpose, for keeps. For keeps, Isla agreed. Above them, stars fought with Portland clouds for visibility. Around them, the neighborhood slept. And inside them both, certainty settled like a stone. This was it. This was home. This was the life they'd built from lies that became truth, from fake that became real, from fear that became love. They'd started as a strategy, ended as forever, and somewhere in between, they'd become exactly what they were always meant to be, a family.